In the gleaming high-rise towers of Boston's financial district, Maxwell Thornton stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, gazing at the city sprawled beneath him like a conquered kingdom. At 43, Max had everything a man could desire. The corner office at Thornton Investments, a portfolio worth hundreds of millions, a sleek Aston Martin, and a black American Express card that opened every door in the world. And yet, as he stared at his reflection superimposed over the cityscape, he felt nothing but a familiar emptiness. "Mr. Thornton," his assistant's voice came through the intercom, "the board is waiting in the conference room." Max straightened, his custom Italian tie. "Tell them I'll be there in 5. This was Max's life. Meetings, acquisitions, charity galas where he donated obscene amounts to causes he barely remembered the next day. A life that looked perfect on paper but felt increasingly hollow with each passing year. The board meeting proceeded like countless others before it. Max presented the quarterly earnings, announced the acquisition of a struggling tech company they would strip for parts, and outlined the aggressive growth strategy for the coming year. The board members nodded approvingly, their eyes reflecting dollar signs rather than human emotion. "Another record quarter, Max," said Richard Kensington, slapping him on the back after the meeting. Richard had been his father's friend, and now sat on the board. A reminder of the legacy Max had been thrust into when his father died 15 years ago. Your old man would be proud, would he? Max wondered. His father had built Thornton Investments from nothing, while Max had merely expanded what was handed to him. The comparison always left him feeling like an imposter. That evening, Max attended a charity gala at the Four Seasons. He made small talk with Boston's elite, posed for photographs with the mayor, and eventually found himself at the hotel bar, loosening his tie and ordering a scotch, neat, expensive, and utterly predictable. Rough night, huh? The bartender, a young man with intelligent eyes and an easy smile, placed the drink before him. Just the usual, Max replied, barely looking up. Must be nice when the usual includes Macallan 25, the bartender said, with a hint of something. Not envy, but perhaps amusement. Max finally looked at him properly. His name tag read Ray. There was something disarming about his straightforward gaze. I suppose it should be, Max replied, surprising himself with the honesty. Ray wiped down the bar. You know what's funny? I serve drinks worth more than my daily wage to people who don't even taste them. Instead of being offended, Max found himself chuckling. Fair point, I probably couldn't tell this apart from something half the price. That's why I never trust rich folks' taste, Ray said, then immediately looked embarrassed. Sorry, I shouldn't. No, please, Max said. It's refreshing to hear someone speak their mind. An hour and 2 more scotches later, Max found himself still at the bar, having the most genuine conversation he'd had in months. Ray spoke about his grandmother who had raised him, his night classes in business administration, and his dream of opening a community center in his neighborhood of Dorchester, one of Boston's rougher areas. People just need a chance, you know. Somewhere safe to go, to learn, to believe they can be more than what the world expects, Ray said, his eyes brightening with passion. When Ray mentioned the abandoned recreation center the city was auctioning off in his neighborhood, Max felt an unfamiliar stirring, something like purpose. He left his card on the bar with a generous tip. If you're serious about that community center, give me a call. That night, Max dreamed of his childhood for the first time in years. He was 10 again, before the boarding schools and the expectations, when his father would occasionally take him fishing on the weekends. In the dream, his father kept pointing at something in the water that Max couldn't see. He woke at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, with an inexplicable feeling of urgency. The dream faded, but the disquiet remained. The next day, unable to focus on work, Max left early and found himself driving through Dorchester, streets he'd never had reason to visit despite living in Boston his entire life. He parked his Aston Martin outside the dilapidated recreation center Ray had mentioned. The building was a shadow of what it once was. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, the basketball court cracked and overgrown with weeds. Yet, he could See what it might become. As Max walked the perimeter, an elderly woman approached him, wrapped in a worn coat despite the mild May weather. "You looking to buy this place?" she asked, eyeing his expensive suit. "Just looking," Max replied. "Shame. What happened to it?" she said. "Used. To be the heart of the neighborhood. My grandson learned to play basketball here. Now he works over at that fancy hotel downtown." Max felt a strange jolt. "The Four Seasons?" "That's the one. He tends bar there. Name's Ray. Smartest boy you'll ever meet. Too smart for where life put him, but he makes do." Max stared at the woman, feeling as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Ray's grandmother. Of all the random encounters in a city of nearly 700,000 people. "I think I may have met him," Max said carefully. The woman looked at him more closely. "Wait a minute. You're that Thornton fellow, aren't you? From the financial news, Ray mentioned meeting someone important last night." She extended a weathered hand. "I'm Eleanor Jenkins." When Max took her hand, something inexplicable passed between them. A spark of recognition, though he was certain they'd never met before. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly as if she felt it too. "You remind me of someone," she said softly. Before Max could respond, his phone rang. Richard Kensington with an urgent matter that couldn't wait. Max excused himself, but as he drove back to his office, Eleanor Jenkins' face remained in his mind, along with the strange feeling that something significant had just occurred, as if fate had orchestrated their meeting for reasons he couldn't yet comprehend. For the next week, Max found himself distracted during meetings, his mind repeatedly drifting to the encounter in Dorchester. Something about Eleanor Jenkins' eyes haunted him, a familiarity he couldn't place. Twice he picked up his phone to call the number Ray had given him, only to set it down again. What was he thinking, opening a community center? That wasn't his world. Yet the image of the abandoned building persisted, as did the memory of Eleanor's weathered hand in his. On Friday afternoon, his assistant placed a manila folder on his desk. "The background check you requested on Raymond Jenkins, sir." Max had ordered it on impulse, telling himself it was standard due diligence before potentially investing in someone's project. The file revealed nothing particularly surprising. Ray had grown up in Dorchester, raised primarily by his grandmother after his mother died of cancer when he was 8. His father was listed as unknown on his birth certificate. He'd been an excellent student, earned a partial scholarship to Boston University, but had to drop out after 2 years when his grandmother became ill. Since then, he'd worked a series of jobs while taking night classes, maintained a clean record, and was by all accounts a model citizen. At the back of the folder was a photocopy of Ray's high school graduation photo. Max stared at it, feeling an odd tightness in his chest. There was something in the young man's smile that set of his jaw. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Thornton, your dinner reservation at Marino's is in 30 minutes. Max closed the folder and slipped it into his briefcase. "Cancel it. I have other plans." An hour later, Max found himself back at the Four Seasons bar, waiting for Ray's shift to start. When Ray spotted him, his face lit up with genuine surprise. "Mr. Thornton, didn't expect to see you back so soon." "Max, please," he said, feeling strangely nervous. "I was in the neighborhood." Ray raised an eyebrow. "The Four Seasons is your neighborhood." Max smiled despite himself. "Fair point. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about your community center idea." Ray's expression turned serious. "You're really interested?" "I am. In fact, I went to see the recreation center yesterday." "You did? That's... wow." Ray seemed genuinely moved. "My shift ends at 10. We could talk then?" At 10:30, they sat in a quiet corner of the hotel lounge. Ray's passion for his community was infectious as he outlined his vision: educational programs, sports leagues, job training, a safe haven for kids with nowhere else to go. "I met your grandmother yesterday," Max said when Ray paused. "Eleanor. She approached me at the recreation center." Ray's eyes widened. "Gran was there. She hasn't been back to that place in years. Not since..." "Since what?" Ray hesitated. "Since my mom died." She used to work there, running the after-school programs. I'm sorry about your mother, Max said softly. The background check mentioned she passed when you were young. Ray's expression hardened slightly. Background check? So that's how it works in your world? You check up on people before deciding if they're worth your time? Max felt a flush of shame. Standard procedure for potential investments, he said weakly. Is that what I am? An investment opportunity? Ray stood up. Look, I appreciate you considering the community center, but I'm not interested in being anyone's charity, case or pet project. That's not what I meant, Max protested, but Ray was already walking away. Max sat there for several minutes, feeling a strange mixture of guilt and frustration. Why had the background check bothered Ray so much? And why did he, Maxwell Thornton, care about offending a bartender he barely knew? The next day was Saturday, and instead of heading to his usual golf game, Max found himself driving to Dorchester again. This time, he had the address of Eleanor Jenkins' modest two-story home from the background check. He sat in his car for nearly 20 minutes, questioning his own sanity, before finally approaching the door. Eleanor answered on the third knock, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition. Mr. Thornton, this is unexpected. I apologize for the intrusion, Mrs. Jenkins. I was hoping to speak with you. She studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. Come in. And it's Ms. Jenkins. I never married. The house was small but immaculately kept, filled with photographs and well-worn furniture. On the mantel was a picture of a young woman with Ray's smile holding a toddler that was clearly Ray himself. My daughter, Sophia, Eleanor said, following his gaze. She was beautiful, wasn't she? Very, Max agreed, feeling strangely emotional. Ray mentioned she worked at the recreation center. For nearly 10 years, Eleanor confirmed, gesturing for him to sit. She believed in that place, in what it meant for the neighborhood. She paused, her eyes growing distant. Ray told me you two had a disagreement last night. Max winced. I handled things poorly. I'd like to apologize to him. He's not here. Saturday mornings he volunteers at the homeless shelter. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Now, why don't you tell me why you're really here, Mr. Thornton? People like you don't usually find themselves in living rooms like mine without a reason. Max hesitated, unsure himself of what had drawn him here. When we met, did you feel like we'd met before? Eleanor's expression shifted subtly. Why do you ask? I can't explain it, Max admitted. Something feels familiar. Eleanor rose and went to a cabinet in the corner. She returned with a small wooden box and placed it on the coffee table between them. I wasn't going to bring this up. Ray wouldn't want me to, but since you're here. She opened the box and removed a faded photograph. This was taken at a charity event for the recreation center 24 years ago. Max took the photograph with trembling hands. It showed a younger Eleanor, her daughter Sophia, and a man whose face made Max's blood run cold. That's my father, he whispered. William Thornton. Eleanor nodded. Yes, he was a major donor that year. Sophia was the program director who worked with him on the donation. Max stared at the photo, his mind racing. The timing, the resemblance he'd noticed in Ray's graduation picture. Ray was born in January 1999, Eleanor said quietly. Sophia never told me who his father was. She just said he was someone important, someone who couldn't be part of their lives. Max felt as if the room was spinning. His father, William Thornton, pillar of Boston society, had died in 2009 without ever mentioning any of this. If what Eleanor was suggesting was true, then Ray, the bartender to whom he'd been so condescending, was his half-brother. Does Ray know, Max managed to ask, that your father was his father? No. Eleanor took back the photograph. Sophia took that secret to her grave. I've respected her wishes all these years, but when I saw you at the recreation center, she shook her head. Sometimes the universe has its own plans. Max stood abruptly, needing air. I should go, I need to think. As he reached the door, Eleanor called after him. Mr. Thornton, Max. Whatever you decide to do with this information, remember that Ray has built a good life without the Thornton. Name or money. If you come into his life, make sure it's for the right reasons. Max nodded numbly and stepped outside. As he sat in his car, unable to start the engine, he caught a glimpse of himself in the rearview mirror. For the first time, he saw not just himself, but echoes of his father, and now unmistakably traces of Ray Jenkins as well. Max spent the weekend in a daze, alternating between disbelief, anger, and a strange sense of possibility. How could his father have kept this secret? William Thornton, the man who had lectured him endlessly about responsibility and family legacy, had fathered a child and abandoned him without acknowledgement. By Monday morning, Max had convinced himself there must be some mistake. He called his father's former attorney, Gregory Walsh, and arranged to meet him for lunch. "I need to ask you something about my father," Max said once they were seated in the private dining room at the Boston Harbor Hotel. "Something confidential." Gregory, now in his 70s but still sharp as ever, raised an eyebrow. "After 15 years, I thought we'd covered everything in the estate." "This isn't about the estate, at least I don't think it is." Max took a deep breath. "Did my father ever mention a woman named Sophia Jenkins?" She ran programs at a recreation center in Dorchester in the late 90s. The slight widening of Gregory's eyes told Max everything, before the lawyer even spoke. "How did you find out about her?" Gregory asked carefully. Max felt his stomach drop. "Then it's true, he knew her." Gregory sighed heavily, setting down his fork. "Your father made me promise never to discuss this unless you specifically asked about her by name, which until today you never had. So he did have a relationship with her?" "It was brief but intense. William met her while working on a community investment project, one of his rare ventures into philanthropy. He was taken with her. She was everything your mother wasn't, passionate about her work, unimpressed by wealth, genuinely committed to making a difference. And she had his child." It wasn't a question. Gregory nodded slowly. "William didn't know about the pregnancy until after it was too late. Sophia had already decided to raise the child on her own, without his involvement. She felt their worlds were too different. But he knew he had another son out there and never told me." Max couldn't keep the hurt from his voice. "He wanted to tell you many times, especially after Sophia died, but he was afraid. Afraid of how you would see him, afraid of disrupting your life." Gregory reached into his briefcase and removed a sealed envelope yellowed with age. "He asked me to give you this if you ever discovered the truth." Max took the envelope with trembling hands. His father's distinctive handwriting addressed it simply, "For Maxwell, when he asks about Sophia." "I'll leave you to read it privately," Gregory said, standing. "Call me if you have questions afterward." Alone in the dining room, Max broke the seal and unfolded the letter within. "Maxwell, if you're reading this, you've discovered what I was too much of a coward to tell you in life. I have another son, your half-brother. His name is Raymond Jenkins. I could offer many excuses for my silence, that I was protecting our family name, that I was respecting Sophia's wishes to raise him independently, that I didn't want to burden you with my mistakes. The truth is simpler and more shameful. I was afraid of your judgment, afraid of admitting I wasn't the man I pretended to be." Sophia was extraordinary. In another life, perhaps I would have been brave enough to choose her. Instead, I returned to the safe, predictable path our family had always followed. When she told me about the pregnancy, she made it clear she wanted nothing from me. Not money, not recognition, not involvement. Her pride matched my cowardice perfectly. I set up an anonymous trust for Raymond's education, which Sophia reluctantly accepted. I checked on them from a distance over the years. I saw him once at a school basketball game when he was 12. He had my father's height and your determination on the court. After Sophia died, I considered reaching out to Eleanor, offering to take Raymond in, but by then you were preparing to take over the company, and I told myself it would complicate everything. The truth is, I feared you would see it as the ultimate betrayal, that I had another son I'd kept hidden all those years. I'm not asking for forgiveness. What I did or failed to do for Raymond can't be excused, but if you've somehow found him, I ask only that you be better than I was. He deserves to know his brother, if not his father. There is $5 million in a separate trust that Gregory will provide details for. It was always meant for Raymond, though I never found the courage to tell him about it. The weight of this secret has been my heaviest burden. I hope that in discovering it, you might somehow be liberated from the shadow of the man you thought I was. Your father, William. Max read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face by the 3rd reading. All these years, he'd tried to live up to an image of his father that wasn't even real. William Thornton, the paragon of responsibility and tradition, had kept a son secret for over 2 decades. When Gregory returned, Max had composed himself. The trust fund my father mentioned I want the details. Of course, it's been managed separately all these years. Quite substantial now with the accumulated interest. And you've known about Ray all this time? Max couldn't keep the accusation from his voice. Gregory nodded solemnly. I've kept many secrets for your father over the years, Max. This was just one more. Did anyone else know, my mother? No, William was careful. He kept that part of his life completely separate. Max stood, gathering the letter. I need some time to process this. Instead of returning to the office, Max found himself driving to Dorchester again. The recreation center seemed to call to him as he stood outside the chain-link fence, staring at the building that had brought his father and Sophia together. A voice startled him. Stalking empty buildings becoming a habit of yours? Max turned to find Ray watching him, arms crossed defensively. Ray, I was hoping to find you actually. To apologize. For the background check? Ray asked. Or is there something else I should know about? Max hesitated. How could he possibly explain what he'd just learned? That they shared a father, that the great William Thornton had known. About Ray all along but chosen to remain a shadow? I'd like to talk about the community center, Max said instead. I'm still interested in helping if you'll let me. Ray studied him skeptically. Why? You don't know me. You don't know this neighborhood. Maybe I'd like to, Max said simply. Something in his tone must have reached Ray because after a moment, the younger man's posture relaxed slightly. I'm helping at the shelter until 6. If you want to talk after that, I'll be at Dolly's. Diner down the street, Max nodded. I'll be there. As Ray walked away, Max touched the letter in his pocket. There was a second page he hadn't shown Gregory, a page with a single sentence written in his father's hand. The Recreation Center property deed is in the Thornton Holdings portfolio. It has been since 1998. Max pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Karen, I need you to look into a property in Dorchester, a recreation center on Adams Street. It should be in our holdings. Right away, Mr. Thornton. Anything specific you need to know? Everything. And Karen, this stays between us for now. Max ended the call and looked back at the recreation center. All this time, his father had owned the very building that connected him to his secret son. Had he purchased it out of guilt, or was it some twisted way of staying connected to the family he'd never acknowledged? That evening at Dolly's diner, Max waited nervously at a corner booth. When Ray arrived, he seemed surprised to see Max actually there. Honestly, didn't think you'd show, Ray said, sliding into the booth. This isn't exactly your kind of place. I'm learning that I might not know what my kind of place is anymore, Max replied. As they talked about Ray's vision for the community center, Max felt an increasing certainty that he needed to tell Ray the truth. But every time he tried to steer the conversation toward their connection, the words stuck in his throat. You know what's weird, Ray said suddenly. Gran has been acting strange ever since you showed up, asking questions about whether I'd like to know who my father was. I told her the same thing I've always told her, that a man who wasn't there doesn't deserve to be called father. Max flinched involuntarily. Sorry if that sounds harsh, Ray continued, misreading Max's reaction. I just never saw the point in wondering about someone who didn't want to be in my life. What if... Max started, then forced himself to continue. What if he wanted to be, but couldn't, or thought he couldn't? Ray's eyes narrowed. What are you getting at, Thornton? Before Max could answer, his phone rang. It was Karen. I need to take this, he said apologetically, stepping outside. Mr. Thornton, I found the information on that property. It was purchased by Thornton Holdings in 1998. But there's something strange. It's been maintained in the portfolio all these years, but listed as non-transferable, with a special notation from your father. What notation? It says, to be transferred only to RJ or MT jointly upon request. Does that mean anything? To you? Max felt the world tilt beneath him. RJ Raymond Jenkins, MT Maxwell Thornton. His father had left the recreation center to both of his sons together. It means everything, Max whispered. Thank you, Karen. When he returned to the booth, Ray was looking at him expectantly. Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Not a ghost, Max said, his voice unsteady. A bridge. Ray, there's something I need to tell you. Something. About your father. About our father. Ray's expression changed from confusion to shock as Max's words registered. What did you just say? But before Max could explain, the diner door burst open and Eleanor Jenkins rushed in, her face pale with worry. Ray! Thank God you're here. I just got the call. The city's accepting bids on the recreation center tomorrow. Some developer wants to tear it down for condos. Ray stood immediately. How? They said we had at least 6 months. Eleanor stopped short when she saw Max. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Max knew she understood what he had been about to tell Ray. Mr. Thornton, she said, cautiously. I didn't expect to see you here. Gran, what's going on? Ray looked between them. Do you two know something I don't? Eleanor took a deep breath. Ray, there are some things I should have told you a long time ago. About your mother, about your father. And just like that, the moment of revelation Max had been dreading and anticipating was upon them, ready to change all their lives forever. The three of them sat in Eleanor's living room, the ticking of the old mantel clock, the only sound breaking the heavy silence. Ray stood by the window, his back to them, shoulders rigid with tension after hearing the story Eleanor and Max had pieced together for him. 24 years, Ray finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. 24 years. And you never thought to tell me who my father was. He turned to face his grandmother, hurt and betrayal evident in his eyes. Your mother made me promise, Eleanor said softly. She believed it was better for you to grow up without the shadow of a father who couldn't acknowledge you. And you, Ray turned to Max. How long have you known? 3 days, Max answered honestly. I had no idea until I met your grandmother. Here last week. Ray laughed bitterly. 3 days, great. So you've had 3 whole days to process this while I get blindsided in my grandmother's living room. He ran a hand through his hair. William Thornton, Boston's business icon, the man whose charity donations came with giant novelty checks and newspaper photographers. His voice cracked slightly. That man was my father, and he never once tried to see me. Max stood, reaching for the letter in his pocket. That's not entirely true. He watched you from a distance. He set up a trust for you. A trust? Ray's expression hardened. Blood money to ease his conscience while he played happy family with you? Ray, please, Eleanor interjected. It wasn't that simple. Wasn't it? Ray shot back. He had a choice, Gran. Every single day for 24 years, he had a choice to be my father, and every single day, he chose not to be. Max couldn't argue with that truth. You're right, he said quietly. He failed you completely. Nothing can change that. Ray turned his anger directly toward Max. And now what? You find out we're brothers and suddenly want to play family. Is this some kind of redemption project for you? The rich executive connecting with his poor relation. The words stung, but Max recognized the pain behind them. I don't know what this is, he admitted. I just know that when I found out, I couldn't pretend I didn't know. Well, I wish you had, Ray snapped. I've been doing just fine without the Thornton name or money for 24 years. Eleanor moved to Ray's side, placing a weathered hand on his arm. "Raymond James Jenkins, you listen to me. Your mother would be heartbroken to see you filled with such bitterness. She never taught you to hate." "I don't hate him," Ray said, his voice softening as he looked at his grandmother. "I hate that he made me question everything. Was any of it real? Did Mom really want to raise me alone, or was that just the story she told herself because he rejected us?" "Your mother loved you more than anything in this world," Eleanor said firmly. "That has always been the truth, no matter who. Your father was or wasn't." Max stayed silent, feeling like an intruder on their grief. After a moment, Ray looked at him again, his expression still guarded but less hostile. "So what now?" Ray asked. "You've cleared your conscience. You've told me the truth. What exactly do you want from me?" Before Max could answer, his phone buzzed with a text. It was from Karen. "Bid process for Recreation Center accelerated. Developer Morgan Reed submitted offer. Deadline for counterbids, noon tomorrow." Max looked up. "The Recreation Center. I think I can help." "I don't want—" "Your charity," Ray began automatically. "It's not charity," Max interrupted. "It's yours, ours. According to my father's records, he purchased that property in 1998. He left it in trust for both of us, you and me, to claim jointly." Ray's expression shifted from disbelief to confusion. "What? Why would he do that?" "I think—" Max hesitated. "I think it was his way of forcing us to find each other someday. His way of making sure I would have to acknowledge you as my brother." Eleanor sat heavily on the sofa. "William always was too clever for his own good." "Morgan Reed," Ray muttered, refocusing on the immediate problem. "That developer has been trying to gentrify the neighborhood for years. If he gets that property—" "He won't," Max said firmly. "Not if we claim our ownership before the bid. Process completes, but we need to do it together. That was my father's stipulation. The property transfers only to both of us, jointly." Ray paced the small living room. "This is insane. Yesterday I was just a guy trying to save a community center. Today I'm William Thornton's secret son with property rights I never knew about." "I know it's a lot," Max acknowledged, "but right now we have a chance to save something that matters to you, to your mother's memory. And we can figure out the rest later." Ray stopped pacing and looked at Max directly. "And if I agree to this, what do you get out of it?" The question took Max by surprise. What did he want? The answer came to him with unexpected clarity. "A chance to do something that matters, something real." For the first time that evening, Ray's expression softened slightly. "You really mean that, don't you?" "I do," Max said simply. Eleanor watched the exchange with tears in her eyes. "You two may be more alike than you realize." Ray seemed to come to a decision. "I'll work with you on the recreation center, but that's it for now. I'm not ready." "For the brotherhood or whatever this is supposed to be." "Fair enough," Max agreed. The next morning, they met at the law offices of Walsh & Partners. Gregory Walsh's surprise at seeing Ray was evident, though he masked it quickly with professional courtesy. "You look just like him," the elderly lawyer murmured as he shook Ray's hand. "Just like William at your age." Ray stiffened but said nothing. Gregory led them into his office. "I've prepared the documentation to transfer ownership of the Adams Street property from Thornton Holdings to the two of you jointly, as per William's directive. Once you both sign, the property is legally yours and cannot be included in the city's bid process." As Ray reviewed the paperwork, his brow furrowed. "This says the property has been maintained with regular tax payments and inspections for 15 years, even though it's been sitting empty. Your father was meticulous about keeping it in good standing," Gregory confirmed. "I believe he always intended for it to return to its original purpose someday." Ray glanced at Max. "Did you know about this?" Max shook his head. "Until 3 days ago, I had no idea the property existed, let alone that it was in our portfolio." After they signed the necessary documents, Gregory handed them each a key. "The building is yours now, gentlemen. What you do with it is entirely up to you." As they left the law office, Ray seemed lost in thought. "I need to see it," he said finally. "The building. Now that we own it, I need to see inside." An hour later, they stood in the dusty main hall of the former recreation center. Sunlight streamed through the dirty windows, illuminating the abandoned basketball court. Despite years of neglect, the structure itself was sound, a testament to the building's solid construction and whatever maintenance William Thornton had secretly authorized over the years. Ray walked slowly around the perimeter, touching the walls with reverence. "My mom used to bring me here after school. I learned to play basketball on this court. There was a reading room upstairs where she taught literacy classes." Max watched him, trying to imagine a young Ray running through these halls under Sophia's watchful eye. "What happened? Why did it close?" "Budget cuts. The city claimed they couldn't afford to maintain it." Ray's voice hardened. "But the truth is, they just didn't think this neighborhood was worth investing in. A month after it closed, my mom got sick. It was like losing this place broke something in her." As they explored further, they discovered an office at the back of the building. The door was locked, but one of the keys Gregory had given them fit perfectly. Inside, the room was frozen in time, papers still on the desk, a faded calendar on the wall showing April 2001, the month the center had closed. "This was my mom's office," Ray said softly, running his fingers over the dusty desk. Max opened one of the drawers and found a stack of photographs. On top was a picture of a smiling Sophia with a young Ray, maybe 7 years old, both holding basketball trophies. "Little League championships," Ray explained, looking over his shoulder. "Feu Tauniafa, Mom coached my team." As Max continued through the photos, his breath caught. Near the bottom of the stack was a picture of Sophia standing between two men, William Thornton and a younger version of Max himself, perhaps 16 at the time. "I was here," Max whispered, staring at the photo. "I came here with my father for some kind of event. I must have met your mother." Ray took the photo, studying it intently. "The annual fundraising gala. Mom talked about it for weeks beforehand." He looked up at Max. "You really don't remember?" Max shook his head, the guilt crushing. "I was a self-absorbed teenager. Just another boring charity event my father dragged me to." He paused, a memory suddenly surfacing. "Wait, there was a boy who challenged me to a basketball shooting contest. He beat me badly." Max looked at Ray. "Was that you?" A ghost of a smile crossed Ray's face. "Maybe. I used to challenge the rich kids who came to the fundraisers. Thought I was proving something." "You were 10 points better than me, at least," Max admitted. "I remember being impressed." They continued searching the office, and in the bottom drawer, Max found a sealed envelope with his father's handwriting. "For Sophia. Personal." "Should we open it?" Max asked, holding it out to Ray. Ray hesitated, then nodded. "It's been over 20 years. Whatever secrets they had, I think we've earned the right to know." Max carefully opened the envelope and withdrew a handwritten letter. "Sophia, I've just heard about the center's closure. I've tried to intervene with the city council, but there are forces at work beyond even my influence. I'm sorry I couldn't save this place that means so much to you, to both of you. I've arranged to purchase the building through a subsidiary. It will be held in trust until the time is right for Raymond to claim his inheritance. I know you don't want my help, but please allow me this one gesture for our son's future. The enclosed key is to a safe deposit box at First National. Inside is a trust fund for Raymond's education and a letter explaining everything, should you ever decide he deserves to know the truth about me. I understand why you've kept my identity from him. Perhaps it's better this way. I saw him at the basketball court last week. He has your determination and spirit. You've done a remarkable job, Sophia, far better than I could have done. I will always regret the choices I made. Not Raymond, never. Him. But my cowardice in not standing beside you both. The life I return to feels increasingly hollow, though Maxwell remains my greatest joy. Perhaps someday the brothers will meet as equals without the burden of my failures between them. With deepest regret and admiration, William." Ray read the letter twice, his expression unreadable. Then he handed it back to Max and walked to the window, staring out at the overgrown basketball court. "He knew," Ray said finally. "He watched me grow up from a distance and never said a word." "I think he was a coward," Max said quietly. "Trapped in the life he thought he had to live." Ray turned to face him. "And what about you, Max? Are you trapped too?" The question hit Max with unexpected force. Was he? His perfect, empty life suddenly seemed like a prison of his own making. "Maybe I have been," he admitted. "Until now." They stood in silence for several moments, the weight of their shared history filling the space between them. Finally, Ray spoke. "There's a key mentioned in that letter, to a safe deposit box." Max nodded. "We should try to find it." "Not today," Ray said decisively. "Today I need to process all this." He gestured around the recreation center. "But I do know one thing. This place needs to be a community center again. That's what Mom would have wanted." "Then that's what we'll do," Max agreed. "Together?" Ray hesitated, then extended his hand. "Together. As business partners." "Partners," Max repeated, shaking his hand. As they locked up the building and stepped outside, Ray paused. "I have one condition. Whatever we do here, it has to be named after my mother, the Sophia Jenkins Community Center." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Max said softly. As they parted ways, Max knew that the discovery of this building, and of Ray, had changed something fundamental within him. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, he felt a sense of purpose that went beyond profit margins and acquisitions. The recreation center was more than just a building. It was a bridge between two worlds, two brothers, and perhaps two versions of himself, the man he had been and the man he might become. The news that Maxwell Thornton was renovating the old Dorchester Recreation Center spread quickly through both his world and Ray's. In the mahogany-paneled boardrooms of Thornton Investments, the board members exchanged concerned glances when Max announced he would be personally overseeing the project, devoting 3 days a week to its development. "Is this some sort of midlife crisis, Max?" Richard Kensington asked during a private meeting after the announcement. "First you cancel acquisitions meetings, then you start talking about community impact and social responsibility. The shareholders are getting nervous." Max leaned back in his chair, observing the man who had been his father's friend and colleague for decades. Had Richard known about Ray? About Sophia? The thought made him view the older man with new suspicion. "The shareholders will be fine, Richard. Our quarterly profits are up 17%. "This isn't about the numbers," Richard pressed. "It's about perception. You're Maxwell Thornton. You don't personally manage charity projects in Dorchester." "Maybe that's precisely who Maxwell Thornton should be," Max replied coolly. "My father understood the importance of giving back." Richard's expression tightened. "Your father understood the importance of appearances. There's a difference between writing a check with photographers present and getting your hands dirty in the trenches." "Perhaps that was his mistake," Max said, rising to signal the end of the conversation, "and not one I intend to repeat." In Dorchester, Ray faced his own skeptics. His friends questioned his decision to partner with a Thornton, while community leaders expressed concern that the project would ultimately lead to gentrification rather than genuine support for the neighborhood. "You don't know him like I do," Eleanor told Ray as they sat at her kitchen table one evening. "Your brother has more of your mother in him than he realizes." Ray winced slightly at the word brother, still not comfortable with the connection. "I'm not sure you know him either, Gran. It's been 3 weeks." "A grandmother knows," she said cryptically. "He has the same look in his eyes that you get when you're determined to prove something." Ray sighed. "That's what worries me. What if this is just some rich guy's redemption project? What happens when he gets bored and moves on to the next shiny distraction?" Eleanor patted his hand. "Then we'll deal with it. But until then, he's offering resources this community desperately needs. Sometimes, Raymond, pride is a luxury we can't afford." The renovation of the center progressed rapidly with Max's resources behind it. Architects, contractors, and designers transformed the dilapidated building with remarkable efficiency. Max insisted on hiring local workers whenever possible, providing jobs to the very community the center would serve. Ray, meanwhile, developed the programs the center would offer: educational support, job training, sports leagues, arts programs. His experience working with community organizations made him the perfect person to design services that would truly meet local needs. Their working relationship remained professional but guarded. Ray still kept Max at arm's length emotionally, and Max didn't push, understanding that trust would take time if it came at all. A month into the project, Max received an unexpected visitor at his downtown office. Morgan Reed, the developer who had tried to purchase the recreation center property, sat across from him with an expression of calculated friendliness. "I have to admit, I was surprised when the property suddenly became unavailable," Reed said, declining Max's offer of coffee. "Even more surprised to learn it was you who had acquired it. Dorchester isn't exactly Thornton territory." "Markets change," Max replied neutrally. "We go where the opportunities are." Reed smiled thinly. "Indeed. Which is why I'm here with an opportunity of my own. Whatever you paid for that property, I'll double it. The location is perfect for my Riverside Heights development." "It's not for sale." "Triple it then," Reed countered smoothly. "Let's not pretend this community center is anything more than a tax write-off for Thornton Investments." Max felt a surge of anger, but kept his expression impassive. "Mr. Reed, the property isn't for sale at any price, but I am curious. Why is that particular location so important to your development plans?" Reed hesitated, calculating how much to reveal. "The zoning board has approved high-density residential development in that sector. That recreation center sits at the center of 5 blocks I've already acquired. It's the missing piece. For luxury condos that none of the current residents could afford," Max concluded. "It's called progress, Max. Neighborhoods evolve. Some people get displaced. It's unfortunate but inevitable." Reed leaned forward. "You're a businessman. You understand how this works." "I used to think I did," Max replied, "but I'm finding there are other metrics of success beyond profit margins." Reed's friendly facade dropped. "Is this about your secret brother?" "Yes, I know about Raymond Jenkins. Boston's a small town at the top." Max felt his blood run cold. "What exactly do you think you know?" "Enough," Reed smirked. "William Thornton's illegitimate son. Quite the skeleton in the family closet. How would the board react to that news, I wonder? The prestigious Thornton name tarnished by scandal." Max stood slowly, his voice dangerously calm. "Mr. Reed, let me be perfectly clear. Whatever misguided attempt at leverage you think you have, you're mistaken. The center will open as planned. If you attempt to interfere or spread rumors about my family, you'll find that the Thornton influence extends much further than yours ever will." Reed stood as well, straightening his jacket. "You've changed, Max, and not for the better. This bleeding heart routine doesn't suit." "Kayosar, on the contrary," Max replied. "I think I'm finally becoming who I should have been all along." After Reed left, Max sat heavily at his desk, thoughts racing. If Reed knew about Ray, how many others did as well? The possibility of the story becoming public hadn't occurred to him until now. Not that he was ashamed, quite the opposite. But Ray deserved to hear about this threat before tabloid headlines ambushed him. That evening, Max drove to Dorchester. He found Ray at the center, reviewing plans with the electrical contractor. "We need to talk," Max said urgently when they had a moment alone. "Morgan Reed paid me a visit today. He knows about us, about you being our father's son." Ray's expression hardened. And he implied he might make it public if I don't sell him the center." Ray laughed bitterly. "Of course, everything always comes back to business, doesn't it?" "That's not why I'm telling you," Max said, frustrated. "I'm telling you because you deserve to know. This could affect your life, your privacy. I wanted you to be prepared." Ray studied Max's face, seeming to search for something. "What did you tell Reed?" "I told him to go to hell, basically. The center isn't for sale and neither is our privacy." Max paused. "But I can't guarantee he won't leak the story anyway." Ray nodded slowly. "Thank you for warning me." It was the first time Ray had thanked him for anything, and Max felt a small bridge forming between them. "There's something else," Max continued. "I found the key, The one mentioned in our father's letter to your mother. It was in his personal safe at home. Ray's expression shifted. Have you been to the bank? No, I thought we should go together. The next day, they sat in a private room at First National Bank, a small safety deposit box between them on the table. Ray held the key but seemed reluctant to use it. What if there's nothing in there? He asked quietly. What if it's just more empty promises? Then we'll know, Max replied simply. And we'll move forward anyway. Ray finally inserted the key and opened the box. Inside were 3 items: a trust document, a sealed letter addressed to my son, Raymond, and a small jewelry box. Ray opened the trust document first, scanning it quickly. It's dated 1999, the year I was born. He set aside $2 million for my education and future. He laughed hollowly. Fat lot of good it did when I had to drop out of college to take care of Gran. Why didn't your mother access it? Max asked. Pride, probably. Same reason she wouldn't let him be part of our lives. Ray set the document aside and picked up the letter, breaking the seal with careful fingers. Max stood. I can give you privacy to read that. Stay, Ray said, surprising them both. Whatever he has to say, we're in this together now. As Ray read the letter silently, his expression shifted from tension to something more complex. Grief, understanding, perhaps even forgiveness. When he finished, he handed it wordlessly to Max. The letter was several pages long, a father's apology and explanation to a son he'd never known. William detailed his relationship with Sophia, his regret at choosing his existing life over a future with them, and his hope that someday Ray would understand that his absence wasn't from lack of love, but from weakness of character. I've watched you grow from a distance, William had written. At your little league games, school plays, graduation, always at the back, never approaching, respecting your mother's wishes that I remain a shadow in your life rather than a disruption. Not a day has passed that I haven't thought of you, wondered what might have been if I'd made different choices. The hardest day was when your mother passed, seeing your grief and being unable to comfort you. I almost came forward then, but feared my sudden appearance would only add pain to your loss. The final paragraph struck Max hardest. If you're reading this, it likely means I'm gone, and somehow the truth has found its way to you. I hope that Maxwell is part of that truth. You have a brother who doesn't know you exist as I write this, but who I believe would be proud to call you family if he knew. The two of you together represent the best of me, divided between 2 worlds I could never reconcile. Perhaps you can accomplish what I could not, bridging those worlds and healing what I've broken. When Max looked up, Ray was examining the small jewelry box. He opened it to reveal a simple gold pocket watch. It was our grandfather's, Max said, recognizing it immediately. My father carried it every day. Ray held it carefully, running his thumb over the engraved T on the cover. He wanted me to have this? It's the Thornton legacy, Max said softly. It belongs to both of us. Ray closed the watch in his palm. I'm not sure I want his legacy. Then make your own, Max suggested. We both can. As they left the bank, Ray seemed lost in thought. Finally, he spoke. Reed's threat doesn't matter. I'm not ashamed of who my father was, or who my brother is. The words hung between them, the first time Ray had acknowledged their relationship so directly. There's a press conference next week for the center's grand opening, Ray continued. We could just tell the truth, beat Reed to the punch. Max considered this. Are you sure that's what you want? I'm tired of secrets, Ray said firmly. They cost our father his integrity. They kept us apart for 24 years. I don't want to live in their shadow anymore. Max nodded, feeling a weight lifting from his shoulders. Then we'll tell our story on our terms. That night, Max returned to his penthouse overlooking the city. For the first time, the vast space felt not like an achievement, but like an empty stage, a place designed to impress others rather than bring comfort to himself. He thought of Eleanor's cozy home, filled with photographs and memories, and felt a pang of something like envy. His phone rang. It was Richard Kensington. Max, There are rumors circulating. Something about William having another son. Morgan. Reed is talking. The board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. And just like that, the choice was made for them. Max would face the board, his father's old friends and colleagues, and finally speak the truth that had been buried for too long. "I'll be there," he said calmly. "And Richard? Tell them to prepare for changes, significant ones." Max hung up and poured himself a scotch, but found he had no taste for it anymore. Instead, he picked up his phone again and called Ray. "The board's meeting tomorrow morning about us," he explained. "I think it's time for Thornton Investments to meet my brother." There was a long pause before Ray answered. "What time should I be there?" 9 a.m. Wear whatever you want. It's time they adapted to us, not the other way around." In that moment, Max felt something shift inside him, a final breaking away from the lonely, hollow life he'd been living. Tomorrow would bring judgment, possibly rejection from the world he'd known. But for the first time, facing that prospect didn't terrify him, because for the first time, he wouldn't be facing it alone. The boardroom of Thornton Investments fell, silent as Max and Ray entered together. The 12 board members stared with undisguised curiosity at Ray, who wore jeans, a button-down shirt, and a quiet dignity that even their collective wealth couldn't purchase. "Gentlemen, ladies," Max began, taking his place at the head of the table, "I'd like to introduce Raymond Jenkins, my brother." The murmurs that rippled through the room were quickly silenced when Richard Kensington stood. "Max, this is highly irregular. Family matters, however complicated, should be handled privately. This meeting was called to discuss the potential impact of certain rumors on shareholder confidence." "My brother isn't a family matter to be hidden away," Max replied evenly. "And there are no rumors, only facts that have been suppressed for too long." Ray, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "I'm not here to cause problems for your company. I have no interest in Thornton money or the Thornton name. I'm here because Max asked me to come, and because I'm tired of other people controlling the narrative of my life." One of the older board members, Victoria Wellesley, peered at Ray over her glasses. "The resemblance is remarkable. You have William's jawline, young man." "So I've been told," Ray replied. Richard cleared his throat. "While this is all very touching, we have a fiduciary duty to protect this company's reputation. The fact remains that this situation could damage the Thornton brand if it becomes public." Max laughed, a genuine, liberating sound that startled everyone in the room. "The Thornton brand, that's all you care about, isn't it? Not the actual people, not the good we could do with our resources, just the perception, the appearance, the brand." "Max, you're being emotional," Richard cautioned. "I'm being human," Max countered, "something I haven't allowed myself to be for a very long time." He looked around the table. "My father made a choice 25 years ago to protect your precious brand at the expense of his own son. That ends today." Ray placed a hand on Max's arm, a small gesture of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by the board. "I've prepared a statement that will be released today," Max continued. "It acknowledges Ray as William Thornton's son and my half-brother. It explains our partnership in the Sophia Jenkins Community Center, and it announces a new direction for Thornton Investments, one that balances profit with genuine social impact." Richard's face reddened. "You can't make decisions like that unilaterally." "Max, the board—" "Actually, I can," Max interrupted. "As the majority shareholder, I have that authority. But I'm not here to dictate terms. I'm here to invite you to be part of something better than what we've been." Victoria Wellesley tapped, her pen thoughtfully on the table. "What exactly are you proposing, Maxwell?" "A reorganization," Max explained. "Thornton Investments will continue its core business, but will create a new division, Thornton Community Development. It will focus on revitalizing neighborhoods through economic investment, not displacement. Ray has agreed to head this division, bringing his expertise in community organizing and social services." Ray nodded. "With the proper resources, we can create models for development that lift communities instead of erasing them." The next hour was tense, with arguments both pragmatic and philosophical. Some board members saw the potential in Max's vision. Others, like Richard, remained firmly opposed to what they viewed as a dangerous deviation from proven business models. In the end, it came down to a vote. When Victoria Wellesley cast the deciding vote in favor of Max's reorganization plan, Ray exhaled audibly beside him. "Congratulations, Mr. Jenkins," Victoria said with a small smile. "Welcome to the family business." As the board members filed out, Richard lingered, his expression unreadable. "Your father would be turning in his grave," he said quietly. "No," Max replied. "I think he'd finally be at peace." The press conference that afternoon drew more media than the opening of a community centre in Dorchester would normally warrant. Word had spread that Maxwell Thornton was making a major announcement. Eleanor sat in the front row, dressed in her Sunday best, her eyes glistening with pride as Max and Ray stood together at the podium. "Today marks not just the opening of the Sophia Jenkins Community Centre," Max began, "but a new chapter for the Thornton family and our company. 25 years ago, my father made a choice that divided our family. Today, my brother Ray and I are choosing a different path, one of reconciliation and shared purpose." The questions came fast after their announcement, some respectful, others probing for scandal. Ray handled them with natural grace, neither denying his origins nor allowing himself to be defined solely by his newfound connection to the Thornton name. "I'm proud of my mother and grandmother who raised me," he stated firmly. "I'm grateful to know the truth about my father, and I'm looking forward to working with my brother to create opportunities for communities like the one that shaped me." After the press conference, as workers put the finishing touches on the centre for its official opening the next day, Max, Ray and Eleanor walked through the transformed building. The basketball court gleamed with new flooring, the classrooms were equipped with modern technology, and the walls featured photographs of the community's history, including several of Sophia Jenkins. In the main lobby, a large portrait of Sophia greeted visitors, alongside a plaque detailing her vision for the community and her dedication to its children. "She would be so proud," Eleanor said softly, touching the frame. "Not just of this place, but of both of you." Ray nodded, his eyes bright with emotion. "I think she always knew this day would come somehow. That's why she kept all those photographs, those connections to the past." Max stood slightly apart, giving them their moment. He still felt like an outsider to their grief, their memories of Sophia. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't an outsider to genuine human connection. That evening, Max invited Ray and Eleanor to his penthouse for dinner. He'd dismissed his usual caterer and instead spent the afternoon cooking himself, something he hadn't done since college. The results were imperfect, but made with care, which seemed like an apt metaphor for his recent efforts at building a family. As they ate, Eleanor regaled Max with stories of Ray's childhood, his determination to master the piano despite their inability to afford lessons, his habit of organizing the neighborhood kids into elaborate projects, his unfailing protection of those weaker than himself. "He was always a leader," she said proudly, "even when he had nothing but his wits and his heart." Max listened, hungry for these glimpses into the brother he'd never known, the life that had run parallel to his own for so many years. "What about you?" Ray asked unexpectedly. "Gran's been talking about me all night, but I still know almost nothing about my older brother." Max hesitated. "There's not much to tell. Prep school, Harvard, then straight into the family business. My life has been predictable. Until recently," Ray pointed out. "Until recently," Max agreed with a small smile. Eleanor watched their exchange with satisfaction. "William would be pleased to see you two together like this." "Would he?" Ray asked skeptically. "He had 2 decades to make it happen and never did." "Fear is a powerful thing," Eleanor said softly. "It can make even good men make poor choices." After dinner, while Eleanor rested in the guest room, Max and Ray stood on the balcony overlooking the city. In the distance, the lights of Dorchester glowed against the night sky. "It doesn't seem real sometimes," Ray admitted. "A month ago I was just trying to save a building. Now I'm a Thornton, heading a new division of a company I used to protest against." "You'll always be a Jenkins first," Max said. "That's your strength. You bring something to the Thornton name that it's been missing for a long time. Authenticity. Ray turned to look at him. And what about you? What does Maxwell Thornton get out of all this upheaval? Max considered the question seriously. A second chance, a purpose beyond accumulation. A brother. He paused. A family. Ray nodded slowly. Family. Something neither of us has had much of. We have Eleanor, Max pointed out. True. And now she has 2 grandsons to worry about instead of 1. They shared a laugh, the sound carrying across the nighttime cityscape, a small but significant bridge between worlds that had seemed unbridgeable just weeks before. The grand opening of the Sophia Jenkins Community Center the next day drew hundreds from the neighborhood and beyond. Children raced through the hallways, exploring the new facilities with unrestrained enthusiasm. Community elders nodded approvingly at the wall of history that honored their neighborhood's past. Max found himself drawn to the old office that had been Sophia's, now transformed into a career counseling center. On the wall hung the photograph they had discovered, Sophia between William and a teenage Max, their unlikely connection preserved in time. I added that one, Ray said, coming to stand beside him. Thought it was important to remember where all this started. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Max insisted that Ray and Eleanor wield the giant ceremonial scissors. As the red ribbon fell and applause erupted, Max felt a profound sense of rightness, as if some cosmic imbalance had finally been corrected. Richard Kensington approached him afterward, observing the celebration with a bemused expression. Quite the spectacle, not the usual Thornton style. No, Max agreed. It's better. Richard studied him for a moment. You know, I was wrong about one thing. William wouldn't be turning in his grave. In his final years, he spoke often about regrets, roads not taken. I never understood what he meant until now. He gestured toward Ray, who was showing a group of children the new computer lab. He'd be proud of you. Both of you. 6 months later, the changes at Thornton Investments had begun to bear fruit. The Thornton Community Development Division, under Ray's leadership, had launched initiatives in 3 Boston neighborhoods, creating jobs and opportunity without displacing existing residents. The stock price, after an initial dip following their announcements, had climbed to record highs as investors responded to the company's new direction. Max still lived in his penthouse, but it had transformed, filled now with personal touches, photographs, even a piano that Ray played during their now regular family dinners. Eleanor had become a fixture in his life, her practical wisdom and unfailing honesty, a counterbalance to the yes-men he'd surrounded himself with for years. The brothers remained distinct in many ways. Ray still lived in his modest Dorchester apartment, refusing the trappings of wealth that Max took for granted. Max still wore custom suits, while Ray preferred jeans and Oxfords, but they had found common ground in their shared vision and growing respect for each other's strengths. One evening, as they worked late at the community center, Ray found Max staring at Sophia's portrait in the lobby. "What are you thinking?" Ray asked. "That I wish I'd known her," Max replied honestly. "Really known her, not just as some woman at a charity event." Ray nodded. "She would have liked the man you've become, not the man you were." "I like him better too," Max admitted with a small smile. As they walked out together, Ray hesitated before asking, "Do you ever regret it? Upending your perfect life for all this?" He gestured vaguely at the modest surroundings. Max looked around at the center, at the basketball court where children played, at the classrooms where adults learned new skills, at the walls that honored a community's resilience. He thought of the emptiness that had plagued him in his perfect penthouse, the hollow achievements that had filled his resume, but not his heart. "Not for a second," he answered truthfully. "For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I should be." As they locked up the center, the brothers, one born to privilege and one to struggle, now united in purpose, Max reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. Their father's secret had been born of fear and weakness, but its revelation had ultimately led to strength and redemption. The Thornton legacy had been transformed, no longer measured in assets and acquisitions, but in lives improved and communities strengthened. And Max himself had been transformed as well, discovering that the most valuable inheritance wasn't the fortune his father had left him, but the brother he had found and the purpose they now shared. Outside, Eleanor waited for them, ready for the family dinner that had become their Tuesday tradition. As the three of them walked together toward the car, their silhouettes merged in the setting sun, three separate journeys now intertwined into a single, stronger path forward.